I am so happy that I thoroughly enjoyed the first episode of Good Advice. I will mention absolute bias. I am very much in love with Shelley Long, and I was overjoyed to get my hands on the entirety of Good Advice. This is a sitcom from the 90s starring Shelley Long, and I've watched the first episode and I absolutely loved it. So there will be spoilers from now as I talk about what happens in this episode. I haven't watched any other episodes yet, but I'm very much looking forward to. And this is about a psychiatrist called Susie or Susan DeRuzza, of course, played by Shelley Long. We also have Treat Williams as Jack, a divorce lawyer who works in the same building as her. We have Christopher McDonald as Susie's husband, Joey. Ross Malinger as their son, Michael. We also have Kiersten Warren as Lynn and George Wyner as Artie. They all work in this same office building, and I'm assuming, I could be wrong about this, but I'm assuming that a lot of the action going forward is going to take place in this building. If that's the case, I think that could work really well. We do also spend a little bit of time at Susie's house in this episode, and again, I will talk about that when we get there. It actually starts off with a book signing, very immediately establishing the fact that Susie is very successful in her career. I also want to apologise if I swap between calling her Susie and Susan. Obviously, depending on which characters are speaking to her, she is sometimes called Susie and sometimes called Susan in the episode. So if I'm inconsistent, I do apologise. And after the book signing, she arrives back in the office building. She's been on the road for 6 weeks, and she talks to one of Jack's clients, Jack being the divorce attorney. This woman is obviously there to meet with Jack to go through a divorce, but instead Susie decides to take her into her office to give her some therapy instead, which of course is not going to help out Jack financially if Susie manages to convince this woman to stay with her husband. And we definitely had a bit of animosity between Jack and Susie, but I think their relationship in this episode is really delightful, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as we get through the episode. Susie then goes home, and her husband is there, of course, and she hugs her husband and comments that he smells like Charlie, the perfume. And I think immediately the thought is that he's been sleeping with somebody else. I didn't expect what happened next. Susie goes to put something away in the closet, and there's another woman in the closet. Obviously, her husband has been having an affair. He tries to tell her that it's just a one-time thing. This is the first time it's happened, and she ultimately ends that part of the scene by telling him to get his bags. And we then have a rather sweet conversation, and it's a very interesting way to introduce the character of their son, where Susie is having to explain that their father might not be around very much, and she doesn't really go into too much detail about why, but this child is very wise. He is very smart, very in tune to his surroundings, and he has a lot of wisdom and also a lot of comfort for his mother. It was a very lovely introduction to the child. I don't know how prominently he will feature in this, in the rest of the show, but I rather warmed to the character very quickly. We're then back in the office building, and Susie is bickering with Jack, and Jack is telling her that she doesn't reveal that much about herself. He read the book that she wrote. There's not much of her personality in this, and Susie comments, I think quite understandably, that her private life is not for public consumption. And at that moment, the elevator doors open, and Joey, her husband, bursts in singing and dancing. He's carrying flowers, trying obviously to win her back. And they sit down and have a brief conversation, and the conversation kind of ends very quickly when Joey tells her, nobody else ever mattered to me, none of them. And of course, Susie immediately picks up on the them. Joey has very clearly just revealed that this is not a one-off affair. He has been with other women, and Susie ends up being alone in her office and crying, and Jack comes in just to have a really nice heart-to-heart with her, actually. And here we have a great insight into the fact that while we might be seeing a lot of bickering between Jack and Susie, clearly there's a fondness there and a friendship, and that relationship could potentially be quite invaluable for Susie as she gets over this difficult time in her life. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what they do with those characters. I feel like it would be very predictable based purely on this first episode. for those characters to enter a relationship further down the line. I feel like that's what they're setting up. If that happens, I'd be keen to see what happens with that. But at the same time, if it doesn't happen, I'd also applaud them for being unpredictable. So we'll see what happens there. I'm definitely keen to find out. And everybody has left. Susie is about to go home, and the elevator doors open as she's about to go down, and everybody is there, Jack and Artie and Lynn, and clearly we can see that these colleagues are more than just colleagues. They are friends, and I feel like, again, I'm assuming, but I feel like this is going to be our strong ensemble cast. We're going to have Jack and Lynn and Artie and Susan, Susie going forward. But we'll see. We'll find out. I'm really, really looking forward to what could possibly be in store with this. It's not a tremendously long series. We only have 2 seasons with 6 episodes in the first season and 13 in the second, so we only have 19 episodes there. But I will be watching one a week, but I will be also breaking it up with episodes of Kelly, which is another Shelley Long sitcom that I've just started watching, and that's pretty good as well. So far, based purely on the 2 first episodes, I think I'm going to prefer this one, but it's very, very early days. I also won't be watching another episode for a couple of weeks because I want to wait until I've finished rewatching and reviewing season 5 of Cheers, because quite simply, I want to spread out Shelley Long as much as possible. And based on these 2 shows and the 6, I believe, episodes of season 5 I have left of Cheers, I should have enough Shelley Long to last me until the end of the year, which is pretty great. Makes me very happy. And the pilot for Good Advice also makes me very happy. Really thoroughly enjoyed this. Cannot wait to watch the next episode, and looking forward to finding out what happens throughout the rest of the series.